This presentation is going to help you develop a SWOT the right way. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I would say that most of you guys have probably already been exposed to SWOT analysis at some point, but if you haven't, this is the right place to be. That said, a lot of times when we do SWOTs, it's just kind of, brainstorm and whatever comes to mind, that's what you list in your SWOT analysis in each of the four categories. That is not the way I want you to go about it. I've got a process that I want you to follow, and that's what this presentation is all about, in addition to introducing what a SWOT is and what a SWOT can do for you. On this slide is the process that we are going to use in here for conducting a SWOT. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to identify something called key success factors through a good understanding of the industry. Key success factors are what any company in your industry, you or any of your competitors, must do well to stay in business. If you don't do it well, you're not even going to exist. All right. Step 2. Identify driving forces from the general environment analysis and Porter's 5 forces. In other words, you went through the general environment, you went through Porter's 5 forces. What really stuck out to you? What were the 4 or 5 things that you would consider driving forces in your industry? These are things that are important and also things that are in flux, right? So it's not just enough that it's kind of, it seems like this is a big deal, it's important, but if it's been the same for the last 50 years, it's not really a driving force. Driving forces are things that are changing. All right, those are going to be the things that create new opportunities and threats. All right, step 3, going back to key success factors, we're going to analyze the internal organization based on the things that you need to do to be successful in your industry, the key success factors. This will allow you to identify the really important strengths and weaknesses, right? We don't want to identify, for our main SWOT analysis, irrelevant or not that important to success strengths and weaknesses. We want things that are related to what it takes to be successful in the industry. If we have a weakness that's related to a key success factor, well, that's a real threat to our business. We risk going bankrupt, going under. If we have a strength related to key success factors, that's something that we want to continue to build upon, to build around, and build up our business. All right, so I'm not saying never list a strength or weakness that's not related to a key success factor, but you want to focus mostly on the key success factors. All right, number 4, use the environmental driving forces to identify specific threats and opportunities for your company. All right, so the driving forces themselves aren't the opportunities and threats. The opportunities and threats are things that you can do in response to the driving forces. Or, well, the opportunities are things you can do in response. The threats are ways in which specifically the driving force can impact you, and you're going to need to devise a strategy to deal with that. Okay, so let's start with step 1 of that process, identifying key success factors. Key success factors are what you must have to be successful in your industry. They are the minimum requirements for competition. Without these keys, you're really nowhere. So how do we identify them? There's really 2 big categories of key success factors. There's one, we want to look at what customers want, right? So who are our customers and what are the specific attributes they want from us, from our service, or from the product that we're selling? Secondly, though, how does the firm survive competition? I think the second one's not quite as important. It's what customers want, but it's still important, right? We've got to compete with our competitors. Um, what do we need to do to keep our competitors at bay? And that might be internal processes for keeping costs down. It might be the ability to hire really exceptional people. It might be the way that we differentiate our product through marketing by distinguishing it from what our competitors are doing. It could be a number of things. And it could be that you are mostly focused on, what do the customers want rather than on how to survive competition. Um, but you want to think about both as you're trying to identify your key success factors. Three key questions to ask yourself when you're attempting to identify the key success factors. First of all, on what basis do the buyers of the industry's product choose between the competing brands of sellers? What are those attributes of the product or service that buyers are looking for? Second, what product attributes and service characteristics are crucial to competitive success? How do you beat your competition? And three, what shortcomings are almost certain to put a firm at a significant competitive disadvantage? I really want you to hone in on that third question, because if there's something that I can think of kind of as an outside in most cases to the industry that you're going to be identifying key success factors for, and I'm like, if they don't have this, they're nowhere, and I see it, but you didn't list it as a key success factor, I'm going to have a lot of questions about that. So what are the things that if you don't do it, you're in a lot of trouble? All right, these are categories of key success factors. I'm going to ask you to identify key success factors for your business, and the mistake that a lot of students make is they'll just list what I've got on this slide. They'll say, well, technology related key success factors are important, or distribution related key success factors are important. And they never tell me why they're important, but even why is not enough. What are the specific technology aspects that you need? What are the specific distribution related skills, whether it's shelf space or trucking routes, or the ability to outsource that? What is really needed, the specifics that your business requires. So these are just categories to help you think about the different areas that key success factors can fall in. But this slide is not going to tell you the specific key success factors for your industry. So we've got technology related, distribution related, marketing and customer service related, skills and capability related. That refers to the talent that you and the rest of the team in your business bring to the table in pursuing the particular type of business, the industry that you're in. Basically, your adeptness in that industry at doing what you're supposed to do. So if you're a photographer, how good are you at taking pictures? If you're a singer, what's your voice sound like? Number 5, physical capital key success factors. This refers to, do you have the machines? Do you have the buildings to operate? And then number 6 is more about managerial talent key success factors. So hopefully the business classes at MTSU can really help you with number 6, the ability to, to efficiently run your business. All right. What are the key success factors in the fast food industry? What do you think? Maybe pause the video and think about those. Jot those down. All right, pause the video. Here's what I think the key success factors are in the fast food industry. First of all, food quality. And I know you might think, oh, fast food's not known for a high quality. Well, it has to be of certain quality, right? If it's just bad, people are never gonna, go through your drive-through or come into your store to buy fast food. So there's a certain level of food quality that has to be there. How quickly, it's fast food, right? It has to be fast. So how quickly can you get the order to the customer? That's a key success factor. There might be some other things related to the environment of the store. Certainly the cleanliness is going to impact whether customers want to go there. Certainly, maybe the aesthetics of the store and the vibe that it has can really play a factor. Wendy's certainly seems to think so. They've kind of redone a lot of their store locations for a more uh, modern and upscale feel, I think. There may be other things here. Consistency. If I go to a Burger King or whatever fast food restaurant, I should know, if I order that Whopper, what it's going to taste like. It should taste the same every single time. So, all of these things are key success factors in the fast food industry. There may be more that you can think of, especially if you've worked in the fast food industry. I have not. You may have some specific ideas about things you must do to be successful. What you don't want to include here are things that are superfluous, right? Things that may be nice, but you don't have to have it to be successful. I'll give you an example. Um, a student identified for their key success factor. They were doing a case on a fast food restaurant, and they identified touchscreen ordering. And I'm like, touchscreen ordering may be helpful. It may be profitable. I don't know. I doubt that it's an absolute requirement, right? There's too many fast food restaurants that make it without touchscreen ordering. And so to call that a key success factor that just absolutely has to be in place for you to be successful, in my mind, is incorrect. All right, step two, let's identify those driving forces. Driving forces are the major underlying environmental causes of change in competitive conditions. So what are we doing here? We're going back to our general environmental analysis where we looked at all those different categories of the general environment. So we talked about like government policy, sociocultural. We talked about technology, demographic changes, economic conditions, all of those things. Then we also talked about Porter's 5 forces to specifically look at what's going on in our industry. We want to go back and survey those things and identify forces in both of those categories that fit the following 2 criteria. A, they must be in flux. They can't be something that changed, 50 years ago and hasn't changed since. That's not a driving force because all the opportunities and threats from that driving force have been taken, right? For the most part, they've been seized. In the case of a threat, businesses wouldn't exist unless they had already dealt with that threat if it's 50 years old. All right. Second, driving forces must be powerful and meaningful. So it's not enough that it's changing, but if it's something that's kind of peripheral, that doesn't really impact your business, even though there's a lot of flux there, it's not a driving force. So going back to fast food, there may be a lot of turmoil, as there kind of is now in the political system in our country. Um, and, constant churn, constant change, constant fragmentation. But does that really impact fast food? It's not necessarily, it's in flux, but it's not really that powerful or that meaningful to the fast food industry. And so, you've got to think, is it salient? Is it in flux? Those are the 2 characteristics of driving forces. This is a list of the most common categories of driving forces, things that you can kind of think through. A lot of it is kind of a rehash of some of the things we talked about when we talked about the general environment, but just kind of use this. And I'm not saying that this is by any stretch exhaustive. A lot of it depends on what industry you're in, and this does not include much about Porter's 5 forces, although the last one talks about changes in the long-term industry growth rate, which we know can, when it slows down, that can increase the intensity of competition. But this is just a way, just kind of a helpful slide. I'm not even going to talk about each of these categories, but a helpful slide for you to think about, your focal company and what the driving forces might be. But definitely don't ignore other things, other areas of the environment that we've already talked about, specifically Porter's 5. So now that we've identified our key success factors, identified our driving forces, we are going to turn our full attention to the SWOT. So SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, is a powerful tool for sizing up those 4 things. And generally the layout is, strengths in the upper left, weaknesses in the upper right, opportunities in the lower left and threats in the lower right. And you don't have to do it that way. You could list them vertically. It really doesn't matter. But we like to have them all on the same page so that we can build recommendations from those. And I'll show you about that in a minute. So we're looking for these four things. Internal strengths. Internal strengths are the basis for strategy that contribute to the fulfillment of key success factors. Then list internal weaknesses. So strengths and weaknesses are internal things that are based on, specific things to the company right now. Internal weaknesses are things that contribute to deficiencies in the key success factors. All right, now market opportunities are those strategic objectives that relate to flux in our environment that's really impactful, right? So our driving forces, objectives that arise from driving forces. And external threats are obstacles that arise from those same driving forces. So let's start with strengths. Strengths are a property of every organization or venture which answer the question, what is it that we do well? What's so good about us or our product? All right. Strengths are internal, as are weaknesses. Every organization, even in the same environment, though, is going to have a different set of strengths which they worked up for themselves, even though the key success factors are, pretty much identical, right? If we look at Wendy's, Burger King, McDonald's, what they have to do to be successful in the fast food industry is the same. But if we look at their individual strengths, it may be very different, right? Different price points, different levels of quality, different things that they're doing in terms of speed, and there's a lot of differences there. All right, some examples of strengths: a loyal customer base. Don't make the mistake of thinking, oh, a customer base is external, so that can't be a strength. Well, when we talk about internal, we're talking about things that are specific to the organization, not things that are going on in the general environment that the company can't really control. So a loyal customer base belongs to your company specifically. It's been built up by the actions of your company over time. All right. Other examples include lots of money, lots of capital, premium quality. Maybe you're known for your high quality service. Tech skills, people and networking skills, so your social skills there, and then your individual talent. What it is that you're good at, or the team that you've assembled is good at. All right, weaknesses. These are competitive deficiencies. It's something that a firm lacks or does poorly in comparison to others anyway, or a condition that puts you at a competitive disadvantage in the marketplace. These are things that allow you not to achieve your key success factor. And you want to be specific, right? So key success factors for the restaurant industry, we talked about, you know, quality of food and speed and cleanliness and environment. Well, you want to be a little more specific when you actually talk about the weaknesses, right? It's not just low food quality, but what are the food items that are of low quality? What's the problem with the supplier that's causing you to have low food quality? Be as specific as you can. Is it the cooking process? Is it a particular, there's nothing that says you have to show this to your employees. It may be a particular employee and you're doing this and you write down that, Joe Bob is a weakness because Joe Bob can't cook. So a weakness is a competitive deficiency. Some other types of weaknesses are inferior skills, expertise, or intellectual capital. You just don't have the know-how. You may have deficiencies in your physical location or the kinds of the type of building that you have or your address. You may have organizational deficiencies. You're not well run, you're not well managed, and you know it. Even as a small business owner, don't be afraid to put that. I'm not good at managing my resources, or I'm not good at managing my people. You've got to be honest with yourself. Or intangible assets, and those are things like brand, things like the human capital of your worker. All right. If you're missing any competitively important capabilities, if you have inferior capabilities in key areas, you want to list it at this point. Okay, opportunities and threats. We know that these are related to our driving forces, but what are they exactly? An opportunity is an opening in the market or change in the industry that allows your company to achieve competitive advantage by being economically profitable, by being timely, right? Opportunities have a fresh date on them. You can't go past that, right? If you can't say, "Oh, I see this opportunity here in Murfreesboro for a gym on this side of town. I think I'll pursue that opportunity in 2025." By this point, it's probably too late. All right. And opportunities can create value for interested buyers. It does so by decreasing the small business's costs of operation. That's always nice. Or providing a way to create more value by differentiating your product or service. All right. A threat. A threat is a condition in the market industry that may hinder a firm's efforts to achieve competitive advantage by doing one of two things. I'm sorry, three things. One, things that are going on in the environment that increase your cost of doing business. Two, if other companies present a cheaper alternative to what it is you're doing, some kind of substitute that is cheaper than what you're doing, or if there's something going on out there that lessens the value in some way of what you're doing, all right, by maybe creating a superior alternative to your product that makes your product look less attractive by comparison, right? Somebody comes out with a superior alternative and all of a sudden, customers compare the two and you're inferior somehow because of maybe a new technology wrinkle, because of a new feature, whatever it is. All three of those things are threats to you, right? Cost, cheaper alternatives, or superior alternatives are all threats that really threaten the viability of your business. All right, when it comes to opportunities for change, there are kind of three categories. There may be an absolute must pursue opportunity, and you want to be able to really make sure you see those. All right, these represent much potential, but perhaps it's hidden in the fog of the future from others, and so you see it ahead of the curve, and you go ahead and pursue that. You want to differentiate from the next two categories. So a marginally interesting market. It presents high risk and questionable profit potential. It may be seen as a pie in the sky, and so there's a lot more risk here. It's not necessarily a must pursue. And then there may be something that's unsuitable or mismatched. Maybe there is a real opportunity there, but it's not for you, and you need to have the wherewithal to identify that, right? Your strengths do not line up well with the market factors that are required to pursue this opportunity. All right, what about threats? There are two types of threats. There are normal course of business threats, and then there are sudden death survival threats. And we want to identify both, right? We don't want to ignore either one. When you consider threats, you need to identify the threats that are going to impact the firm's future prospects, right? Something that's going to diminish your ability to make a profit. The next four slides simply give a lot of examples of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You see on this slide, we've got strengths and weaknesses. Here we have other potential strengths and other potential weaknesses. So strengths and weaknesses continue. And now we get into market opportunities and external threats to the company's future profitability. Opportunities and threats continued. All right, here's the big takeaway. All right, you're not done when you've finished your SWOT. Simply making lists of companies' strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, if you never put anything into practice, it's not going to help you. The payoff from a SWOT analysis comes from the conclusion about a company's situation and the implication for strategy improvement that flow from the four lists. So how are we going to do that? How are we going to draw conclusions from the SWOT that we can turn into strategic actions? How can we translate the four categories of the SWOT into specific things to do? First of all, we want to match internal strengths to market opportunities. We've got a strength, something we're good at. We see some market opportunities. We want to pursue those opportunities by leveraging our strengths, because if we can do that, we're going to be in a very good position compared to other companies, compared to our competitors, to snatch those opportunities. Potentially double down on strengths. A lot of people make the mistake of ignoring their strengths. Like, this is my strength, now I need to turn my attention to my weaknesses. That's not necessarily the case. There may be a strength that you can continue to build around, right? If you've got some talent or a capability or a skill in a certain area in your business, you can bring in more talent. You can enhance that skill. You can go back for more knowledge and learning around that talent and really build up your advantage even further. All right. You may want to correct important weaknesses. If you have weaknesses that are related to key success factors and that are really going to hinder you from being successful, you've either got to correct those weaknesses or consider outsourcing them. All right. Number 4, again, we're talking about using our strengths. We want to focus around our strengths again. We've identified some external threats. How can we use our strengths to guard against external threats? Our strengths may be our financial capital, and we've got an external threat coming from outside individuals that have this new technology that we don't have. Well, use your financial capital to invest in that new technology so that you do have it. All right, that's just one example that I can give there. All right, number 5. Number 5 is the one where it's like, oh crap, I've got a problem here. Identify weaknesses that line up with threats and consider outsourcing. So if you've got a weakness and a threat's going to come along that really is going to exploit that weakness, you've got to kind of be ready to take drastic action. And it's hard. It takes a long time to improve weaknesses. And if the threat is an immediate threat, you really need to consider saying, hey, I've got this weakness. Here's a threat coming. I've got to outsource this. Outsourcing buys you 2 things. One, it puts your process that you're not so good at in the hands of somebody that's more capable. Second, it reduces your risk. It reduces your exposure, right? There's a threat coming down the road, and instead of me investing in all this stuff to try to get ready for the threat, I sign a 6-month contract with a supplier. And the supplier may not be ready for the threat either, but at the end of the 6 months, that contract's over, and if the supplier hasn't handled the threat, I can move along because my contract is up. And so, those are just some examples, some specific ways that you can, what you should do if you see a weakness and a threat lining up. And overall, these are 5 different things that a SWOT can nudge you towards in terms of strategic action. Recommendations for the business that you analyze, the small business that you interview, and your own need to flow from the SWOT. So there's going to be a question on a homework where you have to come up with some recommendations. They need to flow out of that SWOT analysis.